Today, we're going to talk about why moving to a new city feels so scary. So if you're anything like me, you once had a period in your life where you were thinking about moving to a new city and even thought deep down you knew it was the right move. You may have struggled to actually follow through with it, or it took you a number of months to finally do it. Safe to say that moving is scary. I have done it 4 times, moving back and forth between various Canadian cities, and all of this was only within the same country, in Canada. Every time I moved, despite knowing that I wanted to make the move, I struggled to pull the trigger. And it required another big life-changing event to make that decision for me, whether that was being accepted to post-secondary education, losing my corporate job, loneliness, or more recently, giving up on Toronto's housing market. Whatever the case was, I recognize following through with your decision to move is a massive step. Something that I feel people who have left their city can really only relate to for the most part. When you think about it, you're not just leaving your city, you're most likely leaving all your friends, your family, and familiarity, and entering the unknown. So in this video, I'm going to explain why it's so difficult for you to make the move, and I'm going to share the mental struggle that people often forget about when it comes to leaving your city. So if you enjoy what you're hearing so far, I would appreciate if you guys could do me a quick favor, smash the like button, the subscribe button, or follow me on Instagram. And now, let's begin. Let's begin with why moving feels so scary, and we need to talk about the emotional fear of the unknown. As we look into this Harvard Business Review article, we're basically wired to fear the unknown, whether that's switching jobs because your current one sucks, asking that person out that you're interested in, or moving to a new city altogether is nerve-wracking. However, we miss a critical fact, which is the idea that uncertainty and possibility are often on the same coin. For example, prior to moving back to Calgary, I struggled for months in Toronto whether I should move back here in Calgary. Like, I logically understood that affording to live in Toronto in the long term felt like a losing war, and thought home ownership there was only something like Mr. Beast could ever give me. Yet I was still fearful of coming back to Calgary given the negative experience the first time around. Even when I was living in my hometown of Winnipeg, and this is a big generalization, I recognized there were 3 types of people. Okay, one was like people who romanticized the city a little bit too much, who are like,
yeah, Frank, Winnipeg's the best city ever. We got the best restaurants in the world, and there's just so much to do here.
And then we have group number 2, who were too familiar and was like,
yeah, the city sucks, but I'm used to it. It's affordable. Got my family here, and life is great.
And then finally we have group number 3, who's like, and I'll be honest, starting from scratch is quite daunting because, I mean, sure, let's just say wherever you're going to probably sounds a lot better on paper at least, and you likely will be making a lot more money, or that could be a reason. But it can sort of just feels, at the end of the day, what's the good with all of that when you may not have any one form of community or social circle or even a family in that city. It can sometimes feel like your identity is shaken. When you move to a new city, it's normal to feel quite excited. Everything feels fresh, full of possibility, but after 6 to 12 months, that newness fades and you start settling back into your old pattern. This is known as the hedonic treadmill, the idea that we return to a baseline level of happiness even after a major life change. What surprised me is that there's an actual term for this emotional dip that can come after a move, known as relocation depression. Not everyone experiences, but it's something worth being aware of. Whether you're moving to a new city, province, country, or even just a new home, it can feel overwhelming. That initial high can quickly give way to anxiety, doubt, or even sadness. I felt this firsthand when I left my hometown at 18 years of age and moved to Toronto. It was a huge shift. I went from like a city population of 800,000 to a metropolis city of nearly 6 million. I remember the FOMO of watching all my friends back home having fun while I was broke, isolated in a basement suite, hoping things would get better. Even when I moved to Calgary for the first time, there were a lot of uncertainty. At the time, I had lost my job in Toronto, so I had nothing going for me. But I just had this gut feeling that Calgary was the right move. And a year later, but when doing that, it didn't work out. And honestly, that's okay. I realized that what felt like weakness was actually a strength. I took the risk. I moved despite people saying it was dumb or like a waste of money. It's completely normal to feel off or to grieve your old life after a big move. That's why I always say don't just move to a new city because it looks good on paper. It's not just about affordability or even a job opportunity. It's about lifestyle, connection, and how you actually feel when you're there. Let's talk about one of the biggest challenges of moving to a new city, and that's making adult friendships. It's something that doesn't get talked about enough, and it can feel really isolating. A while back, I made a video on how to make friends in Calgary, but honestly, this applies to pretty much any city. When I first moved to Calgary during the pandemic, everything was shut down. I didn't have a chance to meet people, and most of my past friendships had come through school. So suddenly, I was in a new city, in a lockdown, with no built-in way to connect with people. And to be honest, that was one of the main reasons I left Calgary the first time. What I also realized is that no one really teaches you how friendships changes in adulthood. When you're younger, you're automatically placed in environments like school where everyone's your age doing similar things. But the moment you're an adult, the rules shift. You have to put yourself out there, make plans, and be intentional if you want to build any sort of connection. Of course, I get that our dependence on friendship can lessen with age. Many people start prioritizing family, kids, and long-term partners. And that's pretty fair. Your priorities inevitably just evolve. That doesn't mean you stop caring about friends, but it does shift your energy. What helped me the most was joining clubs. Like when I moved back to Calgary, I had a completely different experience thanks to a local run club, saying yes to invites, showing up consistently. The key is finding something you truly enjoy, something you would do with or without people, and sticking with it. Whether it's running, hiking, volleyball, or a book club, if you show up regularly, you'll start seeing familiar faces, and over time, that consistency builds trust, familiarity, and from there, real friendships can grow. Making friends as an adult isn't always easy, I'm just telling you the truth, but it's possible when you're intentional and patient with the process. Let me ask you a question, and it sounds sort of weird, but do you feel like it's time to leave your comfort zone? And could leaving actually spark something positive in your life? The answer really depends on two things. First, do you want to leave in the first place? And second, are you willing to lean into the discomfort that comes along with it? For me, it would have been so easy to stay in my hometown of Winnipeg. School was affordable, the cost of living was pretty low, and all my friends and family were there. But deep down, I knew I wasn't being challenged. Like, I couldn't accept the idea that just because I was born there, it meant I was meant to stay. So I left to Toronto when I was 18. I was pretty scared, but I embraced this uncertainty because I believed something better was out there, even if I didn't know exactly what it was at the time. With that being said, whether you want to identify me as like a realtor, YouTuber, employee, that fear of starting over no longer scares me anymore. And I feel like it's because I've now done it once and had no experience. So doing it again with all this experience that I built over the last decade feels more than possible. That mindset shift has been everything. So I define myself by my job titles, but I know I built a life from scratch, and that's kind of like the superpower I built over the years. Which is why I always tell people, if you're considering a move, see it as like an opportunity, not a setback. Worst case scenario, you just move back home basically. Sure, your hometown people might have an opinion, but they're not the ones living your life at the end of it. And honestly, there's more strengths, in my opinion, in trying and failing than never trying at all. And of course, I know some people are tied down to their city by family or finances, and that's real. But for many, it's less about ability and more about the mindset. If you truly want to leave, you probably can. It just starts with a willingness to leave your comfort zone. To wrap up this video, I want to say moving to a new city is one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make, and it's totally normal to go through ups and downs once you're actually there. From my own experience, I say it takes about like 1 to 2 years before a place really starts to feel like home. Like I said earlier, if that new city no longer serves you, you can always move back. I used to get all this heat, if you want to call it that, from people saying like, oh, Frank, you're always moving. You must not know what you're doing with your life. And honestly, they were kind of right. But I wouldn't change a thing because every move taught me something more about myself, what I valued, what I like, what I don't like. Because I have lived in different cities across Canada, I now feel way more confident in my decisions to live in Calgary because I have seen a smaller city like Winnipeg. Great people, but a bit too small for me. I experienced Toronto. Endless things to do, but way too expensive and hectic. Calgary feels like the right balance. That said, I can't make a full claim that I'll be in Calgary forever, and I do have all the intentions of staying in Calgary, but that's the thing. You never know where the future lies, and honestly, that's pretty okay. If you're thinking about moving and it feels scary, I hope this video gave you a little more reassurance. And if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, or follow me on Instagram. And I guess I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.